Hi there, and welcome to Wordplay Workshop. My name is Miss Dana. Over the next few workshops, you and I will be working together to write a personal narrative. Now, if you don't know what a personal narrative is, don't worry. I'll tell you a little secret. Most students don't know what a personal narrative is. In fact, most grown-ups don't know what a personal narrative is. But I promise you this. By the end of our unit, not only will you know exactly what a personal narrative is, but you will have written the best personal narrative that you can write. That's my promise to you. So you might have noticed the giant trash can on the wall beside me. And you might be wondering why your writing instructor has a trash can on the wall. That's a very valid question, and I'm about to give you the answer. It's because I believe that writing should be fun. And I believe that the more fun I can make writing for you, the more you will enjoy it. And the more you enjoy writing, the more you will want to do it, and the better you will become at it. So at Wordplay Workshop, we're not just building better writers, we're helping you have fun with the writing process. And for that reason, at the beginning of every workshop, I like to play a game. This is one of my favorite games. It's called Put It in the Trash Can, and you're going to literally be putting words in the trash can. It's one of my favorites because it's so simple, and yet it's so much fun. So this is how the game works. You should have a sheet that looks just like this, although you can use a blank piece of paper as well. I'm going to give you a word, which you will write in the center of your paper. Then you will have 60 seconds to brainstorm and write down as many words and phrases as you can associate with the given word. So for instance, if I give you the word penguin, you might write down cold, icy, ice cream, Antarctic. You might write down the types of penguins. But you also might write down some things that don't seem to go very well with penguin, like grandma's house. Because maybe thinking of a penguin made you think of cold places, and then you think, my grandma's house is always cold. Great, write down grandma's house. I'm not going to come by and look at your paper and tell you, nope, you can't write down grandma's house. The point of this is just for you to brainstorm, wake up your brain, and have a little bit of fun. So are you ready to start? Okay, your word is writing. Ready? Go. Welcome back. Did you write a lot of words down? Give yourself 1 point for every word that you wrote down, and give yourself a pat on the back. While you were gone, I did some brainstorming on my own. I thought of all the students I've taught over the years and the words that they wrote down when I asked them to play this game with the word writing. You can see that a lot of their words are not very nice words about writing. A lot of my students find writing hard, stressful, difficult, scary. Now some find it fun, but I'd say for the most part, students are a little bit scared of the writing process. Now why is that? Well, let's compare it to this. What if I said to you, please go build a house, and then come get me and I'll look at it and I'll give you a grade on it? That wouldn't be very fair, would it? Because, unless I'm wrong, you don't know how to lay a foundation, or do the framing for walls, or put in the plumbing, or the electricity, or the roof, or the chimney, or any of that stuff. I sure don't know how to do it. So just like I'm not going to say to you, go build a house, I'm not going to say to you, go write a personal narrative. Because first, I'm going to give you the tools. The tools are what we're going to talk about in the workshops. In the workshops, you'll be studying different tools that you can use to build a personal narrative. Tools like how to write a paragraph, how to write spectacular sentences, and not just boring sentences, how to use punctuation, how to write a fantastic beginning, how to write a great ending to make people really enjoy your story, how to use dialogue. Those are all tools that writers need in order to write longer things like a personal narrative. So I'm going to give you those tools, and together we're going to construct a great personal narrative. So let's talk about personal narratives. What is a personal narrative? Well, personal means you. Narrative simply means a story. So a personal narrative is a story about you told by you. We're going to start by reading a personal narrative that I wrote about my childhood, and then we're going to examine it to see if it meets all the criteria for being a true personal narrative. So bear with me while I read through this. My story is called Losing and Finding My Baby Brother, and it really happened. Rough. Outside the dining room window, the German shepherds barked and dug their snouts into the warm earth, while their police handlers murmured into squawking radios. I closed my eyes so I wouldn't have to look at them. They were a reminder that my baby brother was missing and that it was all my fault. Just 1 hour earlier, Mom had trusted me to put him down for a nap. She had never let me do that before. A 9-year-old is too young to be responsible for a toddler, she would say to me. Baby Luke is just too little, Dana. But today she had trusted me, and guess what? I forgot to latch his crib, and he had crawled out. Now he was gone. We had searched the house top to bottom. The neighbors were canvassing the streets, and the police were marching down to the pond a block away. What if Luke had fallen in the pond? What if, what if, what if? I couldn't stop thinking about all the terrible things that might have happened to him. Even though Mom was saying something, I walked out of the room. I didn't want to listen anymore, or watch anymore, or think anymore. I just wanted to bury my face in the pillow and cry. Sure, Luke could be really annoying and sometimes a little bratty, but I didn't want him gone forever. Just as I was about to throw myself down on my bed, something under my covers moved. Out popped a tiny hand, and then the covers shifted, and there was a tiny face grinning up at me. "Peekaboo," Baby Luke shouted. "I hiding," he said, and he reached out his chubby arms and hugged my neck. "You finded me." So I hope you liked my personal narrative. We're going to look a little more closely at it now to see if it meets the criteria for being a personal narrative. You should have a sheet just like this printed out so you can follow along as we go through the criteria. First of all, does it tell a story? Yes, it does. Does it focus on a little moment versus a big moment? We'll learn more about little moments in another workshop, but for now, yes, it focuses on a little moment. It's not a book, it doesn't have chapters, it's a very short piece of writing that tells a story. Does it have at least one character? Yes, it does. Does it tell the story in first person? In other words, does it use the pronoun I? Does it tell the story from my point of view? Yes, it does. I walked, I lost my brother, I found my baby brother. Does it use dialogue? Yes, it does. Does it have action? Yes. Sometimes you might come across a personal narrative where most of the action occurs in a character's mind, and that's okay. This one happens to have action outside of the character's mind. Does it use sensory details? Well, we'll talk more about sensory details in another workshop, but for now, if you just look at the first paragraph, you will find sensory details. Instead of dogs, we talk about the German shepherds. We're very specific about the type of dogs. They barked and dug their snouts into the warm earth. What kind of earth? Warm. We're engaging the sense of touch right there. Their police handlers murmured into squawking radios. Not just talked, but murmured. We're engaging the sense of hearing. So those are types of sensory details that you want to try and use in your personal narrative. Does it have a beginning, middle, and end? Yes, the beginning is where baby Luke is lost, the middle is where we're looking, and the end is where he's found. Does it have an interesting beginning or hook? Well, I think so. We'll talk about that in a later workshop. But I hope that it does have an interesting hook. I hope that after the first paragraph you wanted to keep reading to find out why baby Luke was missing and, of course, if we actually found him. And finally, does my narrative have a purpose? Does it tell you why the event is important? Does it tell you how the narrator changed or what he or she learned? Yes, I think it does. You can be the judge, but I think that what the narrator learned is that even though her little brother could be bratty, she loved him and she didn't want him to be gone. So if you look at the characteristics of a personal narrative, this meets every single one. And after you write your own personal narrative, you'll go back and make sure that yours meets these characteristics as well. In the middle of every workshop, we'll take a break so you can complete a short mid-workshop assignment. Your first assignment is to answer a list of comprehension questions about the narrative we just read together. The first 4 are true and false. These are not questions that you will send in to me. These are just questions that you will do at home as practice, and we'll go over them together. So first you're going to write true and false. After the first paragraph, I wanted to keep reading. I hope these are all true. The story used good details. I liked the story. I think the narrator got in trouble for losing her brother when the story ended. That one's true. I'll give you a hint. Then the next 4 are questions that you should write out on a separate sheet of paper in complete sentences. First, what do you know about the narrator? Pretend you're a detective and go back through the story and look for clues about the narrator. Where does the story take place? What is the main problem? Sometimes we use the word conflict to talk about the main problem. And then finally, I want you to explain how the narrator finds baby Luke. So again, these are not to be turned in. These are just for you and your teacher or your parents, and then we'll discuss them in the next video. Welcome back. Those comprehension questions weren't too hard, were they? In the middle of every workshop, you'll have a similar assignment. It'll never be too long or too hard, and it's not to turn in. It's just so you get a little bit of practice writing what we're talking about in the middle of each workshop. So let's go over the true or false ones. After the first paragraph, did you want to keep reading? Well, I hope you did. The first paragraph of any personal narrative, or really of anything, is critical, because that's where your reader makes a decision about whether or not to carry on writing. You want your first paragraph to be so strong that your reader is going, oh my goodness, I cannot wait to see what happens next, versus, okay, this is kind of boring, and I'm putting it down now and walking away. You want to have an excellent opening paragraph, and we have a workshop coming up that talks just about opening paragraphs. Okay, the second true or false. The story used good details. Well, did I? We talked about this a little bit already. Remember how in my narrative I talked about the police radios murmuring and how the German shepherds, not just dogs, but German shepherds, dug their snouts into the warm earth. If you go back through the narrative, you'll see that I took a lot of care to put a lot of really good specific details in there. You want to do that as well. You want to paint a very clear picture of what's happening. Because if I say the dogs, maybe you're picturing poodles, chihuahuas, boxers, mutts. But if I say German shepherds, do you get a clear picture in your mind immediately of the dogs I'm talking about? Yes, you do. Okay, did you like the story? I hope you did. That might seem a very simple true or false, but it's important. Because you want your reader to like your story, and you want to like writing it. Don't write about something that's boring to you. Don't write about something that's not important. Write about what you want to write. What interests you, what excites you, what is important to you. I think the narrator got in trouble for losing her brother when the story ended. Yes, I was grounded for a week, and I never again forgot to put the latch on my brother's crib. All right, the comprehension questions. What do you know about the narrator, and where does the story take place? Okay, these were a little bit of trick questions, and maybe you sat there going through the story going, I can't find anything about the narrator. I can't find out anything about the setting. I don't know if it was in Oklahoma or Florida or France or Brazil. I have no idea. Well, that's because I didn't tell you. And maybe about the narrator you were saying, well, I know her name was Dana, and I know she had a brother named Luke, and I think it said that she was 9 years old, but I don't know much about her at all. Again, I kind of tried to trick you, so I'm sorry if I did trick you. The point of that is that when you write your own story, I want you to realize a personal narrative is not the time for you to be telling your life history to your reader. It's not the time for you to be telling them your favorite type of cake or your best day ever when you were 3 years old or your first memory, unless that's what your personal narrative is about. You don't need to talk about how tall you are or what color hair you have unless that is critical to the story. Same with the setting. You might mention where you are, but it's not the time to be composing beautiful paragraphs about the glorious woods around you while the monster's chasing you. No, the action is that the monster is chasing you. The beauty of the woods really doesn't matter. Focus on the action. And by the way, since a personal narrative is supposed to be a true story, if a monster's chasing you through the woods, we've got a problem. The third question was, what is the main problem? And sometimes we use the word conflict to talk about the main problem. The reason I wanted you to think about this is because your personal narrative should have something happening. It should be a story. It's not just going to be a piece of writing about how much you like writing or the outdoors or how special a certain teacher is to you. That's not what it's about. Something should happen, even if it's something that's just happening in your mind. If you're talking about how much you changed one time when you saw something happening or watched a movie, that's fine. It's happening in your mind, but it's happening. It could also be action-packed. That's fine too. But keep in mind that something has to be happening in your narrative. And likewise, there has to be an ending. That's why I asked the fourth question about how was the personal narrative resolved? How did the narrator find baby Luke? because I want you to realize that your personal narrative should have an ending. It's not open-ended. It's not a cliffhanger. You don't leave the reader in the middle of the action. You want it to come to a conclusion. Think of it like you're tying a bow on a package. There should be some sort of identifiable ending in your personal narrative. So let's go over those again. You need a strong first paragraph. You need to use good details. You need to like your story. You want your reader to like the story. You should not tell too much about the narrator. You should not spend too much time talking about the setting. You need action. Something should happen, and that something should also come to an end. It should be resolved. So that's the end of Workshop 1. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about the assignment you'll be doing for Workshop 1. Are you ready for your first assignment? Great. Well, remember how a minute ago I told you that personal narratives are not the place to be talking about yourself? For this assignment, I want you to tell me all about yourself. I want you to write a paragraph, or 2 or 3 or 4 if you want to, telling me about you. What makes you special? What makes you unique? What makes you different from everybody else in the world? What do you want me to know about you? Write at least 3 sentences, make them complete sentences, follow the formatting and submission guidelines. Try to keep it under, say, 10 pages. But other than that, I'm not going to give you a lot of guidelines. Just write at least 3 sentences telling me about yourself. I look forward to getting to know you.